Well, hello and good evening. Welcome. This is Business Focus here on TV3. We're live as well on TV3 Ghana on Facebook, DSTV channel 279 all across the world on 3news.com. I am Alfred Okonse. I'm sitting in for your regular host, Parkwesi Asari. Tonight here on Business Focus, the Customs Division of the Ghana Revenue Authority is warning clearing agents, shipping lines and importers in the country to desist from falsifying documentation and information on trade now, or they will face the full rigors of the law. In fact, we'll get into that because there's some reaction to this particular directive. Stay with us here on Business Focus. Now, government has also been reported as mulling the NIB, that's the National Investment Bank, takeover by the ADB. Now, what are the possible implications on the bank's finances? And in fact, is the ADB in the financial position to take over NIB? And we'll look into all of that and whether there are other options that government should be considering in this particular instance. Plus, the Ghana Association of Banks is hinting of resisting any further domestic debt exchange program. They want a formal communication of the end of the DDEP. Stay with us, we'll get into that. Also tonight, we ask if the increased cocoa producer price is indeed sufficient to stop smuggling and bolster production. We'll be speaking to the president of the Ghana National Association of Cocoa Farmers. He's going to be joining us here on Business Focus. As always, you have a part to play in the conversation here on Business Focus. Stay with us. Let's take a quick run-up of some of the stories that have made headlines over the last 24 hours in the world of business.
Today in business, household spending is expected to reach 107.8 billion cedis in 2023, higher than the 101.9 billion recorded in 2019. That's according to Fitch Solutions' latest reports, dubbed Ghana Consumer Outlook. Fears of increases in cost of borrowing are rising amidst increasing Treasury bill rates, which is nearing 32%. At the latest auction by the Bank of Ghana, government's Treasury bills were oversubscribed, and yet interest rates still inched up, stirring up worry among market watchers. German car giant BMW has announced plans to invest hundreds of millions of pounds to prepare its mini factory near Oxford to build a new generation of electric cars. Production of 2 new electric mini models is due to begin at the plant in Cowley in 2026. Currently, there are more than 4,000 people working across the Oxford and Swindon factories.
You're also live here on Business Focus. We're live on TV3 Ghana on Facebook, DSTV channel 279 all across the world on 3news.com. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly after this quick break. We'll get into the conversation about government mulling the idea of having ADB take over the NIB and whether the ADB itself is in the financial position to do what government is actually thinking about and whether it's going to be a prudent option for government to even consider to have ADB take over NIB. What are the implications and what are the options? We'll have a conversation tonight. Stay with us right after this quick break. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to demonstrate to you the superior properties of Flamingo paint as compared to other paint brands on the market. We take equal quantities of Flamingo paint and this ordinary paint. We then dilute them with water. And now, let the test begin. The gentleman on the left is going to apply the ordinary paint and the gentleman on my right will use the Flamingo superior paint. As you can clearly see, Flamingo has the obvious better hiding. Furthermore, Flamingo has painted a much larger area. You know, one bucket of Flamingo paint is equal to several buckets of any other paint brand on the market. Flamingo paint is made with superior formulation to give superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage. Flamingo paint, simply superior. When the sun rises, there is hope. While this hope lingers on, the citizens look up to the government, the economy, the national development agenda, and everything in between. On Ghana Tonight, it's our utmost priority to bring you insightful conversations on the economy, break down the biggest issues while setting the agenda for transformation and national development. The big and important stories are treated from the human interest angle, while the facts and the figures are painted with precision. So now, let's cut the convention and start the conversation here on Ghana Tonight. I am your host, Alfred Okansi.
Ghana Tonight shows Monday to Friday at 10 p.m. on TV3. Brought to you by
Flamingo paint, superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage, simply superior.
Are you ready to win solid cash every day with Cash Out? Be a proud winner of lots of cash simply by watching or listening to any of Media General stations. That's right, you are being rewarded for your loyalty. Tune in to all Media General brands. TV3, 3FM 92.7, Onia TV, Onia FM 95.1, all in Accra, Akuma FM 87.9 in Kumasi, and Connect FM 97.1 in Takoradi. To enter the Cash Out raffle on your favorite Media General station, just dial *439#. Follow the prompt and pick your favorite platform to enter. Voila! You are now eligible to become one of the 10 lucky winners of a cool cash prize. Remember, this is every day, all day on your favorite Media General station. Cash out and win big! This is in partnership with Radio Entertainment Limited. This promo is regulated by the National Lottery Authority on the Caritas Lottery platform. Terms and conditions apply.
Ghana coming out again, the same squad. For LeBron, he's got it! Throw it down, Pennington!
Sports Station, Mondays 9 p.m. on TV3.
Sports Station is brought to you by Betway, Nesta Mouthwash.
Flamingo paint, superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage, simply superior. Welcome back to Business Focus here on TV3. Now, there were earlier reports about government considering or mulling the idea of actually having the ADB take over the National Investment Bank. What we do know is that that's the NIB itself hasn't published its accounts for the past 2 years consistently. Now, there are fundamental concerns that have been raised about this particular consideration that government is even giving a thought to. My colleague Michael Obodo is joining me now to run through the basics of the shareholding structure of NIB and then also ADB, and whether, taking into consideration all of that, it will be a prudent idea for government to even go on this path. Michael, what have we found?
Well, yeah, so we know that a lot of the banks in the country were impacted with the domestic debt exchange program, and so a lot of them are not necessarily in a very good place as we speak. And that has come to the fore now, even as we are speaking about ADB taking over NIB, and especially we gather the bank wasn't doing too well, even before, that's for NIB, even before the whole domestic debt exchange program came into the fore. So they also haven't taken a hit, as from what we are gathering, as part of the reason why this proposal has come for ADB to absorb the bank in order to save it from total collapse. Now, from what we've gathered, especially about ADB's shareholding structure, we see that Financial Investment Trust hosts about 64% of the total shares of the bank. Government of Ghana has 21.5%, and then the Ghana Amalgamated Trust PLC also in there with some shares. And then we have retail investors and ADB staff having about 3.2%. Now, the bank successfully listed on the Ghana Stock Exchange on December 2026, and I'm sure that is all part of what has helped to ensure that the bank stays in good form, has all the necessary capital it needs to stay afloat and operate.
But let's look at the NIB shareholding structure as well. Let's take into consideration this ADB one. So let's go to NIB. What did we find in there as well? Okay,
let me try and pull that out. So based on the earlier reports, the government of Ghana is said to have more than 50% stake in NIB. It is followed by the Financial Trust Fund held by the Bank of Ghana with a little over 44%. The remaining shares are held by some investors. So NIB is Ghana's first development bank.
Right.
It was established in 1963 primarily to promote rapid industrialization in all sectors of the Ghanaian economy. Well, this also raises a lot of concern about whether the bank in itself was
actually doing that.
Yeah, living up to expectation, its mandate, or it was just a white elephant. But obviously, so to execute its mandate, the bank has undergone a management, institutional, and financial restructuring. Now, it's interesting that this conversation about ADB taking over NIB isn't new. It came up sometime 2018 thereabouts, but interestingly also, the ADB staff had raised some objections to this move. They felt that ADB has the capacity to sort of pseudo-run NIB on the side instead of absorbing the bank fully. So there's been a lot of interesting conversations on basically ADB taking over NIB. So mixed reactions there. Not everybody thinks it's a great idea for ADB to take over. But some of the analysts that we have spoken to have also shared some varied opinions. There's also the idea that, well, maybe that's a good alternative to consider if we don't want to lose jobs, for instance, and we don't want to have our local banks run under the bus. But then the issue of whether ADB in itself is in a good place to take over NIB as it is reeling under the impact of the DDEP is a big question that begs answers.
Indeed, that's a critical question that we're going to put to Dr. Richmond Echiane. Is a banking consultant. He's joining us on the telephone. Thank you, Dr. Echiane, for your time here on Business Focus. So this idea of government considering NIB, in fact, ADB take over NIB, is this the most prudent option on the table for government to save NIB?
Thank you, Alfred. I mean, looking at the figures at the moment, I don't think it will be feasible and financially feasible for ADB to merge with NIB. Why I'm saying so is that ADB is not seriously after the DDEP. They are not financially strong. Actually, they are not financially strong to be able to take over NIB. But NIB has got a precarious position. It's not been doing well for the last, not 2 years, as you said. It's about 4 years now. But we have not given it a due attention that we should have done, even when we're doing the financial sector reform, the amalgamated trust and what have you. But unfortunately, we didn't look at it critically. We could have considered it as early as 2018 and 2017, when the World Bank, the IMF reported that the bank was insolvent. Unfortunately, we have left it as it is, and now we are trying to merge two institutions, what I would call, they are not strategically fit. When we say that the synergy, the synergistic effect between NIB and ADB, it doesn't look good. So for the time being, I think the government will have to look at it critically, whether they would consider again that would they recapitalize NIB. Because, Alfred, the story is that NIB is reeling because most of the contractors took the loans and never paid. And this has been part of our problem. I mean, when we say that the banks are in trouble, most of the state banks, they have been financing Ghanaian contracts and have never been paid. And if you've not been paid, then you have a problem with your capital. Secondly, we have poor corporate governance in this state institution. When I say corporate governance is that, who do we appoint as board members? Who do we appoint as managing directors and executives?
True.
So we are paying the price. It's the price that we are paying today for not doing what was right earlier. So that is what I would say as far as NIB and ADB is concerned, Alfred.
So it's a very, very important point you make about what has led to the financial situation of a number of the financial institutions we're dealing with. Contractors on government contracts, because government hasn't paid them, they also can't pay the banks back the loans they have taken. I think a typical case is GN Bank, which went down. They advanced a lot of loans to contractors who were also executing government contracts. Government failed to pay these contractors, and which affected the liquidity position of the bank, and they were eventually closed down by the central bank for not meeting the requirement. But you see, there is that other angle about the social impact of this. That's as my colleague Michael Ogodo was saying, that there is a fear that if this bank is not safe, the NIB is not safe, we're going to lose jobs as well. I mean, will the takeover in any way address that social impact concern that some people who favor this whole idea are pushing?
Thank you very much, Alfred. I mean, in any mergers or acquisition, takeover, always people will suffer. So whatever you decide to do, whether you go for mergers or one is taking over or one is amalgamating with another, definitely we need to close some branches down. We need to scheme our businesses. We need to trim down because you cannot carry the same weight doing the same thing at the same time. Definitely on the social side of it, whatever choice Ghana government makes, some people will suffer. And don't forget, this has been going on from 2018. We had a similar case. People lost their job. And long before that, after that, we have the DDEP. Currently, the DDEP is also going to have its own cuts on employment. So the NIB case hasn't come at the right time as far as the social impact is concerned. Definitely, whatever strategy they adopt, somebody will have to lose his job, and that will have the social consequences on the economy. So whatever government, what strategy he adopts, whether merger, acquisition, or takeover, definitely people are going to have problems with jobs. Definitely, because we need to reduce it. We need to cut the quota according to size. You can't have two people managers at the same time. And with that, definitely somebody is going to lose his job.
Dr. Annie, stay with me, because Dr. Aboagye Deborah, good friend who is also a banking consultant, also holds the view that ADB can take over NIB, but then needs to be recapitalized before it can do so. Take a listen. But while we rectify the audio with that, Dr. Chani, is it also an option to look at that? As you indicated, ADB itself is not in the financial position to take over NIB because they're also struggling with their own situation financially as well. Will recapitalizing ADB to now have the financial muscle to do what government is expecting of it be a prudent option to take in this instance?
In the midst of the challenges and difficulties, maybe it will be the option, but let me make it clear. Whether you recapitalize ADB to take over NIB, the unemployment situation would still come to hit us.
Right.
no matter what we do. It is possible that maybe they use stability fund, part of the stability to finance it, right? To recapitalize ADB, to make it stronger so that it can look at NIB. But even that one, I just want to say that it's going to impact on the employment, whether we like it or not. It will definitely have effect on it.
I see. And so what will be your own proposal on this? What should be done to ensure that the most prudent, financially feasible option is taken in this instance?
Thank you very much, Alfred. I think it's very, very unfortunate. I'll say this to you, and I've been saying it, and I will say it and say it again. As a country, we don't want to build indigenous institutions. That is all. And it's very sad. It's very, very sad. I'll give you one example. Have you ever seen any Ghanaian bank participating in Nigerian banking sector? Absolutely nothing. Have you seen any Ghanaian bank participating in South African banking industry? Absolutely none. But you have all these institutions participating in our landscape, our financial scape. Unfortunately, we are a country, and let me make it this statement to those who are in charge. It will be sad and very sad that we don't want to build any strong indigenous institution that will be able to even move away from Ghana to compete in Togo, let alone South Africa, and let alone Nigeria. And this is a serious thing. I think these politicians should sit down, because NIB was created in 1963 to look at the industrial sector. ADB was also looked at agri sector. Unfortunately, in the year 2003, they changed the licensing regime. And gave a universal banking. You cannot give universal banking license to a development banking. Unfortunately, that was the beginning of the problem that we have. Okay. And you said ADB is on the market. What is the price of ADB on the market? ADB had to go for guts to be able to survive in 2020.
Yeah.
What is the performance of ADB shares on the stock exchange? I mean, as a country, we need to be serious. We need to be serious. And I want to use your platform to tell the whole country that a time has come for us to develop indigenous institutions. Look, if you look at, Alfred, let me tell you something.
Right.
If you look at the telecos, can you talk about any Ghanaian telco business competing with the MTN? When you look at the mining sector, we have the Newmonts, we have this and that. Increasingly, we are selling our best right. Let the politicians get it right. We have sold the mines, our birthright. We have sold the telecos. Now we are dismantling the indigenous institutions. Where would we be in the next 10 or 5 years? There will be no bank. So let them sit down and reflect. Is it apply? I guess because IMF is saying it, do we want to do that? Is it going to be the interest of the country for the years to come? That is where I caution Ghanaians that a time has come for us to look at developing a domestic institution that can compete internationally. It can compete even sub-region, let alone competing in South Africa. Zenith is in America. Zenith is in London.
Okay.
I mean, the bank in Ghana, the GIB, is not just a Ghanaian bank as such. What are we proud of what? For me, I'm so sad. I'm very, very sad that NIB, a very good bank, which I have been there for some time, is now being dismantled or destroyed by those who call themselves the so-called experts in finance and banking.
Unfortunate. That's the sad reality that we're dealing with. I thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Richmond Achane is a banking consultant. Let me also welcome Professor Lord Mensah. He is a senior lecturer and also an economist at the University of Ghana Business School. Professor Lord Mensah, good evening. Thank you for joining us here on Business Focus.
Yeah, good evening and good evening to our viewers.
Great. Let's hear from Dr. Boaji Deborah on this point about the recapitalization of ADB so they will be in the financial strength to take over NIB? Take a look.
What will be more important is that the two institutions, as we speak now, the impact of the DDEP has really impacted on even the ADB financials. So it's not only just the NIB, which is a bit insolvent. My take is, after the proposed merger is consummated, I think there's a need to be able to support the whole capital restoration plan for the merged entity, because that will really help for the bank to be able to support business growth, because a mere putting them together will not resolve anything, because as we speak, the bank is not healthy in terms of business growth. So I'll be happy to see a plan in place to be able to support the entire business drive, and that will entail or will call for some capital support when the merger is consummated. And I think that will give everybody comfort in terms of all the stakeholders. Employers will be happy, other stakeholders will be happy, customers will be happy, and then leadership will be able to drive the agenda for growth.
Dr. Abajida Brother, let's, Professor Lord Mensah, so this underlying the submission of Dr. Abajida Brother is the social impact of a possible takeover, and which will obviously lead to job losses and so on, and so rather you get some financial injection into one to be able to have the financial strength to take over the other as well. Will that work out? Will that work out in any way?
Yeah, so we're looking at, two banks, and these are all state interest, banks, ADB and then NIB. Now, recapitalizing ADB at whose cost? Is the state cost. And from where I sit, looking at the economic situation, we don't have to incur any extra cost as a country to recapitalize, ADB for it to have that financial muscle to absorb, NIB. Now, the two banks, if we look at the way they've been spread across the country, clearly we know, it employs people, across. Talking about NIB, for instance, it has a way of, covering, let me say, the triangular, broad base of the country, economic broad base of the country, Kumasi, Accra, and then, Takoradi, and then even further to the north. So from where I sit, I think if you look at the way and manner they've spread, let's take into consideration the social impact as well. And we cannot take for granted the kind of employment, NIB has created, and then the rippling effect of those employment as far as people's homes are concerned. If we turn up to, merge the two banks after you have, capitalized ADB using the state resources, which I am not, in support of that, you may end up having two banks existing maybe 100 meters apart on the same street. And obviously, it won't make economic sense to keep the two branches. You may want one to go, and that will be, the absorbed, bank. And so effectively, that particular branch and the people, working there have lost their jobs. And when it happens like that, it breaks income, to homes and here and there. And looking at the economic situation now, households, I don't think they can bear that branch of, getting, this absorption, done by ADB after they have been recapitalized. If ADB is weak, it is a weak bank. And merging a weak bank with another weak bank, you further, create a synergy, which is also weak, in terms of, the numbers on their balance sheet. And at the end of the day, you may still need, extra financing. And so what we are proposing is that why won't you allow NIB to stay? Because it's serving a purpose. They have client outreach across, the country. And so why don't you allow them to stay and get a private man to pump in or recapitalize NIB, and then NIB in good footing to be active, so that the state reduces its interest in there? Because this behavior of, keep on collapsing banks, merging banks, putting, banks together has not ended up, anywhere as far as base economic management is concerned. We did banking sector cleanup. If you go onto the CBG's balance sheet now, which has, state interest as well, you could see that they are struggling. So effectively, I'm not in support of that kind of, merger. But then I'm proposing that they will look at, getting a private investor to pump in money into NIB to absorb part of the state interest. And I think that will serve us better than, looking at merging it with ADB. I
see. Well, maybe in a quick one, Dr. That's Professor Lord Mensah. So you talk about the numbers on their balance sheet. I mean, in the case of NIB, for the past couple of years, they haven't published their accounts, have they? So we can't even get a true assessment of what the state of affairs is. Only that we know that their books are quite toxic, and so they cannot sustain their operations for long.
Yeah, but if you look at, the structures they have, the books may be looking toxic, but then it does not mean that, they've lost all the, items on their balance sheet. They still have fixed assets well spread across the country. So all that they need is liquidation, how to liquefy them or by pumping in money for them to be active operationally. And that shouldn't take, any, serious economic analysis to do. From where I sit, NIB is still on good ground as far as the base of their balance sheet is concerned. All that they need is the upper part of their balance sheet, that where they need cash and other things, to be active. So it's not something that that's beyond the private investor.
Okay, I thank you. Professor Lord Mensah is an economist and also senior lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. This is Business Focus. We'll be right back after this quick break. The Customs Division of the Ghana Revenue Authority has issued a stern warning to clearing agents and shipping lines and importers in the country to desist from falsifying information on trade documents, or they will face the full rigors of the law. It comes on the back of intelligence work by the division that revealed that 2 agents and importers were heavily engaged in such activities at the Tema Port. We'll get into that. We have the new cocoa prices announced by the president over the weekend on our radar. In fact, the former president, John Mahama, and flag bearer of the NDC, has indicated that it's a rip-off of cocoa farmers. We'll be joined by the president of the National Cocoa Farmers Association as well to have a conversation on this matter. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly.
Scent of rose in the morning brings me so much joy. Inspired by damask rose and infused with 100% natural rose oil. Introducing new Clay Soft Perfume Beads washing powder. It's like bringing a garden with you everywhere with this wonderful perfume. Take a garden with you everywhere you go with Clay Soft Perfume Beads washing powder.
Get ready for another cultural explosion like never before. On 21st September, Africa will witness an ultimate celebration of African diversity and flavor at the 3FM Afro Connect event. This is the place to experience the magic of African arts and creativity. You also get to unite in a sizzling Jollof War competition, igniting a culinary showdown. Will Cote d'Ivoire hold the Jollof War title? So whether you're passionate about food, art, games, or simply making new connections, 3FM Afro Connect event on the 21st of September is the place to be. Venue, Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Park. To sell, call 053-220-0927. 3FM Afro Connect, connecting Africa and beyond.
Brought to you by 3FM 92.7, your urban lifestyle radio. The 3FM Afro Connect is proudly sponsored by...
Welcome back to Business Focus. Now, there's concern raised by the Customs Division of Ghana Revenue Authority. I'm going to put that on the screen right now, and we'll be connecting with George Paddy shortly with the Ghana Union of Trade Association, GUTA. But take a look at this. This is what the basis for the Ghana Revenue Authority's earlier warning. They say that agents are conniving with shipping lines to falsify trade documentation. That's a manifest bill of, and then also the bill of lading. Some agents process customs declaration with inaccurate particulars. And then also they talk about issues relating to other matters of trade at the ports. And the focus was on priority clearance and lesser duty and taxes, which is the major impact. And then also the local shipping lines are said to be involved in all of this. And agents are charging importers the right duties and taxes, but under declaring to the Ghana Revenue Authority what's going on at the port. So let's hear from the Ghana Revenue Authority on this, and we'll connect with the GUTA shortly. Take a look.
The Ghana Revenue Authority, Custom Division in particular, has noted with great concern an emerging practice where some declarants, that is customs house agents and the importers, connive with some shipping lines to falsify information on trade documents, especially the bill of lading and the invoices, sometimes misdescribing the goods to obtain priority clearance, leading to payment of lesser duties to the state. The division acted on intelligence received somewhere in February this year on 2 companies, and the importers, that have dotted their bills of lading in clearing goods from the Tema port. The goods were targeted and intercepted for physical examination, and the results indicated that the description of the goods on the bill of ladings were different from the physical goods found after examination. The actual descriptions of the consignment were footwears. What we found were footwears, bags, that's belts, underwear, galvanized pipes, etc. But they were all entered as knapsack sprayers. Subsequent to that revelation, Management Tax Internal Audit and the Post-Clearance Audit Unit to do further investigations into our system, especially on those 2 importers and their agents. And subsequent to that, we had 23 bill of entries which had earlier been entered within the same period and which had also been misdescribed as the same knapsack sprayers. We are equally expanding the investigation to cover 6 years earlier, because we have realized that, and other companies, because it may not be the only companies who are doing that. And there's a possibility of prosecuting all those involved. And well,
so let's go on to Zoom now. And Joseph Paddy is head of industrial relations at the Ghana Union of Trade Association, GUTA. He's joining us. Mr. Paddy, thank you so much for joining us here on Business Focus. So the GRA is saying that you, that's if some of your members are agents, you are conniving with shipping lines to rip the nation of the needed revenue. What's going on at the ports? Why are you doing this?
Alfred, thank you very much. Let me say good evening to your listeners and your viewers. It's unfortunate, but you have to know that like there's a saying in our language that in every house there's a Mensa in there. He made mention of 2 agents. So you can't, because of these 2 bad apples, you can't brand all of us as bad apples. This is where I want the Alaji to know and come from, the commissioner. We know him very well. We've been working with him over this period of time. Alfred, GRA always meets its target. Always meets its target, and even exceed its target before the end of the year. So business community are not doing bad at all. So if we have just 2 bad apples who have connived to dupe the government, I think the law should deal with them. But one thing we've been complaining about, Alfred, is that we've been saying that our tax rate in this country is extremely high, and because it is difficult for people to comply, compliance level becomes very low. Cumulatively, you go to the port and you are going to clear your goods, you pay to about 51 to 50, almost 53% of your invoice value. So just imagine you got a goods worth about $100,000. You are paying a duty over $51,000. So when you position your tax rate at this position, it makes compliance extremely high. That's the most times, GUTA, our position is that why can't you reduce the tax rate so that the compliance level will go up? See, these are some of the difficulty and challenges we find ourselves. You see, so it's not that the business community want to undermine government or under invoice. You see, WTO says that every business that we do, even at a port, we should use transactional value, which means that the value of your invoice should be used to calculate duty for you. But what do we see? When we come down here, when we give them our invoices, they benchmark it, they uplift it, and says that when we went onto the net, the price you are giving us is different from that which is on the net. But you can't use the internet to give pricing of goods and services. So these are some of the challenges. That's why they give us this. We said, no, WTO, let's use transactional value. This is how much I bought the goods from abroad. Because of my negotiating skills, I got it a little cheaper or whichever way. You can even go and do a search or go and do a finding that this company, did you give this product to this man at this rate? Then you can come out with your duty. But what do we see? Anytime we come with our invoices, they uplift the invoice. So it makes compliance extremely high. Cost of doing business in this country, yes.
So are you saying that because the taxes are high, that leads to evasion, and some of you, the agents, employ other means to evade the taxes?
What I'm saying is that it makes compliance of tax very low. When your tax rate is high, compliance is low. Because no businessman wants to go out of business. The first intention of every businessman is to maximize profit. If even not anything at all, he must be able to break even. But if he's doing business, not even breaking even as a result of this high tax, because to be surprised, after you'll be surprised that taxes on product is even more than the cost of the item itself. And let me give a typical example. You go abroad and go and buy a Toyota Corolla for about $3,000. And then you come to Ghana and you are paying a duty for about 43,000 Ghana. So the tax itself is even more than the cost of the item. So if it happens that way, compliance, because that is why it's an open secret. You see that people are transporting their cars through Togo and stuff. So why do we position your tax regime into? So if we have to do anything to at all, let's review our tax rate so that compliance will go up. But I don't think the GRA should use these two issues to benchmark all the trading community that we are undermining government or we are under invoicing of our invoices. I don't think that's the real position. We've been doing business with GRA, and then we believe we have been helpful to the country to raise the needed revenue, because GRA always meets its target anyway, whichever way we find ourselves, it meets its target. So the business community is really, really struggling and suffering. After coupled with this GRA at the port, you come to the banking sector, you are going to borrow at the rate of 35 to 40%.
Okay.
Now, policy rate is about almost 30%. And then which business can you go and borrow at the rate of 40% and even break even? You see, so business communities are struggling and are suffering. I believe government should be able to do something about it and come to the aid of business community rather than rubbishing us that we are under invoicing and we are, yes.
Right. Mr. Paddy, thank you. Thank you very much for your time. And we'll spend some time at what's happening at the port in the coming weeks on Business Focus because of the increasing impact of the taxes on your business, as you have just indicated there. But I appreciate your time. Joseph Paddy is with the Ghana Union Trade Association, GUTA. Quickly before we go, the questions have been raised about the increase in the prices of cocoa as announced by the president over the weekend. Well, the concern is that farmers, cocoa farmers, may have just been ripped off because of what's happening on the world market. We'll take a look at the prices on Bloomberg as we speak, but Michael Ogudu has been looking at exactly what the state of affairs is. Michael, what's the exact position of both government and, in fact, John Mahama has raised this as well, and what the farmers have been talking about? Michael.
Well, Alfred, it's been an interesting conversation over the last couple of days since government on Friday announced the increment in the price of cocoa at the ports. The price of cocoa on the market. You know, over the period, it's been a call, especially from players in the cocoa industry, especially cocoa farmers, where they're asking for a significant increase in the price of cocoa because, of course, Cote d'Ivoire tends to lead us in that regard by offering better prices. Hence, the issue of smuggling at the borders, where some of our farmers have decided to opt to go into Cote d'Ivoire and sell their cocoa beans there, where they get better margins. But then, over the weekend, on Friday, actually, exactly, government announced an increment in the price of cocoa.
Let's see the prices and the chronological representation of it. Take a look.
Exactly.
This
so,
is it, right?
as you can see, from 2018 up to date, we've seen some relative increments in prices. As you can see, the 2018-2019 price was at 475. Slight increments the following year to 515. Another increment to 660. It stayed at 660 in 2022, and then 2023 we saw some increase of about 140 cedis, where it went to 880, and now today as we speak it's at 1,308. And the president has been speaking on it, and he says that, quote, government has further raised cocoa prices from $12,800 per ton to $20,943 per ton, equivalent to $1,308 per bag. This new price represents 70.5% of the gross FOB price and is equivalent to $1,821 per ton.
So that's $1,821.
Yes,
dollars
per ton, according to the president. Now, he's saying that this is the highest price paid to cocoa farmers in West Africa in approximately 50 years.
So this is equivalent to what, 1,808 per bag?
Yes, sir, per bag.
Okay. So what is the former president, in fact, the flag bearer of the NDC, also saying about this? Because some questions have been raised
oh, yes, he has
this
some interesting comments to make on that. He says, sadly, government has chosen to give them a paltry $1,308 per bag, cedis per bag, which constitutes only 52.7% of the FOB price of the products on the international market. He adds that during my tenure in 2016, government, in addition to the free fertilizer and free cocoa seedling program, allocated cocoa farmers 66.06% of the FOB price of cocoa. That was the former President John Mahama speaking there. But yeah, as you can see, so prices have gone up marginally. The president is also, the former president is also concerned. He feels that the farmers deserve more. And well, some have argued that, well, over the period, our cocoa farmers have been shortchanged, considering the fact that the chocolate industry, for instance, is $1 billion industry, huge in its magnitude. Yet our farmers seem to be shortchanged consistently due to the what some have described as poor pricing they are receiving for their produce. Okay,
but even if you check the Bloomberg site right now, with the indexing on commodities, specifically agriculture, cocoa is being quoted as $3,659 per ton. That is even below the 3,100 that even John Mahama quoted. So you realize that the question about the farmers possibly could have been giving more, as against what they have been giving now. It's where it sits in here because of what the spot price we're seeing now of a ton of cocoa, 3,659. Well, stay with us because we'll be having some of the farmers in subsequent bulletins joining us to share their views about this latest announcement. But Michael, thank you very much. And on behalf of the rest of the team, I want to say thank you so much for joining us here on Business Focus. Stay with us. News 360 is up next. I am Alfred Okanse. Have a great evening.
Superior coverage, simply superior.